This podcast is sponsored by Pogo, Property Operations on the Go. Facility managers know how challenging it can be to keep everything running smoothly. That's why Pogo was created, a white-labeled software solution designed by property managers for property managers. Pogo is your ultimate all-in-one platform for managing multiple assets. With Pogo, you communicate with your tenants, manage maintenance requests, control property access, manage bookable spaces, and much more. Plus, with advanced analytics, Pogo empowers you to optimize your operations anytime, anywhere. The best part? Pogo is completely customizable to fit your brand and business. Simplify your operations, enhance tenant satisfaction, and save money with Pogo. Ready to make the switch? Visit gopogo.us to schedule your demo today. Pogo, one system, multiple solutions at your fingertips. Mark Beffort here, bringing you relevant discussions with leaders within the commercial real estate business. Happy today to have Ryan McNeill, developer of Oak, really the first Oklahoma City true mixed-use development, kind of the mix of residential, hotel, hospitality, and high-end retail. So glad to have you here today, Ryan.
Thanks for the invitation, Mark.
Yeah. So I'd like to take a step back. You and I met each other probably, 12, 13 years ago and have a mutual respect for each other. At least I have for you. I'm not sure that's the case for you.
Mutual.
And so how did you get into, let's take a step back. How did you get started in the development business?
We'll give two answers to that. I think part by design and part by accident. And I go back to, I graduated college with a finance degree out of state in South Carolina, but grew up here in Oklahoma City.
Oh, South Carolina. What school?
Bob Jones University.
Oh, cool.
Which,
I've heard of it. Yeah, absolutely.
Great business program. And then out of college, had a family member in Texas that introduced me, and I kind of created a tour of interviews, kind of senior year and maybe even a little after graduation, and spent about 2 weeks going down through Texas and interviewing with real estate professionals and getting exposure to different occupations within commercial real estate, different directions. Met some incredible folks, and finished that circuit up here at Valiance Tower and interviewing with Sean Frankfurt. I don't know if you remember Sean.
Oh, yeah, Sean, the old Trammell Crow days.
The old Trammell Crow and that office. And I remember that so I was interested in real estate, but I remember some advice that my dad gave me, which was just use this, I was 23 or so, 24, use this time in your life to really invest in the long-term trajectory of your occupation. And you have so many decisions at that age, it's hard, or so many options, it's kind of hard to narrow your focus. Mm-hmm. But real estate interested me, and so that was kind of a general area of interest in commercial. But when I met with Sean, unknowing to him, and I talked to him recently and shared this with him, and hadn't seen him since then, I said, there was something that you said, that the style of, or the type of person you're looking to hire is somebody that eats work ethic for breakfast. Mm-hmm. And I remember,
sounds like Sean.
Yeah, and I remember thinking at the time, there was another option in front of me that I was a little bit gun-shy toward. But a man named Ralph Mason here in town had a bunch of Sonic
Mason Harrison Gerard, absolutely.
Yeah, and absolutely. He was a neighbor of my folks, and I had lunch with him one Christmas break. I was home from college, and he was such a generous and transparent individual. He just said, anything you want, you come to my office, and I ended up doing that. And he showed me his P&Ls, and he showed me kind of the model that he worked from. And there was something about that I thought, I have this entrepreneurial interest, but some guardrails would be nice in this franchise model. And so when Sean said that, even though there was kind of interest in the glamour of commercial real estate, I thought, I want to go into the restaurant business and learn how to work. Yeah. And got into development by mistake, because that took me to Northern California, my wife and I, to start our Sonic franchise in Sacramento.
No, wait a second. You were a franchisee for Sonic?
Yeah.
I never knew that. That's remarkable.
Yep.
Wow.
So I spent about 2.5 years in the rest, they went up to their corporate headquarters, and they kind of patted me on the head, and I took my dad along for a little bit of street credibility, and he was going to be my financial partner, and I think they just looked at me. I was probably 22 or 3, and I think they probably just said, let's throw him in the restaurant first, before he handed him the keys to anything.
That's impressive.
So, but it was Sean that conversation just made me think, dive in and roll your sleeves up and go learn how to work.
When Sean said you have to eat
work ethic for
you took it literally. You went to Sonic and started eating at Sonic.
Yeah, well, it did. And working double shifts in restaurant in Shawnee for about 2.5 years, and then would take a period of 3 or 4 days and go visit a market in the country. That their real estate folks would show me. And so, quickly coming back to your question, I was generally interested in, the question being, how'd you get into the development business? I was interested in commercial real estate, but we really moved to Sacramento to start the Sonic franchise. And we hit our first location. Took about 2 years to get teed up where we had it, and got out there and failed in a community planning advisory council hearing. We were voted down unanimously because of this drive-through feature. And the next day, I was just left asking, what are we going to do? We had moved, had a 1-year-old son. We were out there, and the answer became, we're going to develop a little 7,500 square foot retail strip center and take a hard right turn. After all that sunk time with Sonic and learning that business, there wasn't really another clear path that I could create except to develop this. And it was by right, if we removed the drive-in restaurant piece of it, we could develop it as a retail strip center, and that's how we embarked from there to get into the retail business.
I mean, that's really interesting. I had not thought about asking this question, but I'll probably ask a question later on. You do have experience of municipalities outside of Oklahoma City. So I may ask you in a little bit, the comparing California municipality to Oklahoma City, because my experience has been, we are so fortunate here that we all work together for the betterment of the community, both private and public sectors. So,
we are.
Yeah. So
we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. So what inspired you to develop Oak?
I think my dad thought big and everything. My dad I give a lot of credit to my dad's influence. He had a great entrepreneurial spirit and kind of a why not mentality. And so it kind of starts with, you have to do something like this, I think you have to be willing to remove the belief barriers, or at least set them aside and ask, how could we? But while I got into that development sequence of that 7,500 square foot strip center, I was already thinking about, well, if I'm going to be in this business now, the development business, who's doing it at the very best and top level? And the answer at that time, and still, was Rick Caruso. Developed the Grove and Americana brand in Southern California, in the LA area. And Santana Row was being developed by Federal. And I was very fortunate when I fell flat on my face in that planning council outcome, that a man took me under his wing and became a mentor of mine.
In California?
In California.
Oh, wow.
Chuck Shaw.
Okay.
And introduced me to developers, and took me and toured me and said, look at this thing, study this thing, and here's the development team. And so it was really that started to set in my mind a vision for, man, wouldn't it be awesome to one day, we knew we'd want to eventually end up back home, bring something like this to Oklahoma.
Yeah. Well, we're here on site, which is really cool. So our podcast here, this is the first on site that we've done, and we're actually looking out over just a magnificent, beautiful Restoration Hardware, and we got our house in the back. You got the apartments. It's truly spectacular. So you've told me that there's a project in Georgia that also inspired you a little bit. What were some of the things about that project that you liked, that you were able to get some vision for Oak?
Yeah. we made a series of acquisitions starting in February of 2016. By this time, it was the Dobson family, Everett Dobson and myself. And with the acquisitions came a certain amount of critical mass. And so it kind of evolved from a project that could just be done on 3 acres to a project that might be done on 10 acres or 15 or now 20 is about how much we own in contiguous property. And so as the scale of the acquisitions grew, the canvas grew, and with that, I started to think, well, I want to go back and revisit these projects. So I did, and flew to several cities and reacquainted myself with projects I knew, and then introduced myself to some that I hadn't known. And Avalon and Alpharetta became one of those that I hadn't known about. But I learned through this tour that there had been another development group that had done something similar, toured these projects and took what they learned into a project that they built in 2014. And so Everett and I went out, and they were very open with us and sharing, and we got to learn about Avalon. And what stood out about Avalon is that it was a Grove-like experience from LA, but brought to a level that could be executed in a market like Atlanta. And you can't build at the same cost and the same amenities that the Grove has, because the retailers are paying rents that are far in excess of what they would pay in Oklahoma. But when I saw Avalon, the lights came on like there's a path, and here are some of the things that are involved with getting there. And so it became a big influence in kind of making it accessible for our market and the rents that our market can support.
Yeah, I love the word canvas that you use, because all developments are really it's a piece of art.
Yeah.
And as you're painting the picture of the oak, and it changes, right? You're changing the design of it, and ultimately to get to the finished product here, which, Frank, I think you've done a beautiful job. I think the feel and the texture of not only the architecture itself, but the design elements. I could tell that you've spent a lot of time on this. So, do you agree that it's an art? You got a blank canvas, which is just a plot of land that you're then molding something.
It is a canvas, and it's not unlike something I said earlier. When you face a large number of options, like I mentioned with a career, when you're just starting out, what direction am I going to go? When you have a canvas or a property, and you have in some ways unlimited number of options, and where, again, I'll mention my dad. He was really good at teaching me as I charted that new course with that first little strip center, of asking me the questions. The questions are so important, because the questions help you then to know what are the confines of and the laws of gravity that can really allow me to be as creative as possible within this canvas, but still look the numbers in the eye and say, this is realistic, this can work. And so it's a balance. And I think there's a quote I came across somewhere along the way, probably 15 years ago, which is, people make mistakes in two directions. They act without thinking, and they think without acting. And somewhere in there, it makes me think about this process of development, because you have the four corners of your project, but you have to balance not getting stuck on thinking about it too much.
Right.
But thinking sufficiently well that you really have a sense of what's possible and what will achieve the outcome that you want.
So now you've raised the bar in Oklahoma. So these projects don't exist here, which cost a lot of money. And when you do that, it then sets a new standards within the market, both from what you see, but also what you have to ultimately get from a financial perspective. What allowed you to kind of get over that hump to really say, okay, we're gonna take a flyer here. I'm going out on a limb here that this is really what the market will support.
retail is the prism through which I'll answer, because if you think about, you said you paid a compliment, which it's the first true mixed-use development. And there have been many multi-use projects. Chisholm is one, a good example. The Half is another, where laterally, horizontally, there's a mix of uses. There's also, or a multi-expression of use. There's also an expression of mixed use in the sense that, you know, the projects that have multifamily above retail. But if you think about what those are in Oklahoma or Oklahoma City, they're mostly through that HUD 221 D4 program.
That's right.
And they kind of turn their back on retail. Retail was what I chose to really focus on within the industry. It really fascinated me, the psychology of retail and consumer behavior. But retail, when it's done well, and when you check the boxes that all the national retailers require you to check, location is obviously key. And the mall across the street and its 40-year history of really wonderful sales performance. That signals to retailers, Northwest Expressway and Penn, if we're coming to Oklahoma City and we're going to plant one flag,
that's ground zero.
This is ground zero. And so it starts with that, and that allows you then, thinking about the capital structure, allows you to wean yourself off of what was kind of almost a prerequisite to look at that D4 program, to think about the rents that the retailers can generate if they succeed, and some of the percentage rent lease clauses, if they do well, can wean you off of the D4 program, and you can start thinking about multifamily with a more traditional loan. But you really have an obligation to each of those use types for this true kind of mixed use environment and outcome, to not turn your back on the needs of the residents or the hotel or eventually the office. And so it works its way into so many different site planning elements, such as like having the ramp to the residential part of the parking garage be dedicated for just the residents, and not to mix with the retail and the public parking element. So
that's great. That's great. So project of this size, all real estate projects come with difficulties, but project of this size has significant challenges along the way, difficulties. What were some of the ones that you faced that you looked at yourself and you go, man, I'm not going to get around it. How am I going to figure this one out? Give us a couple nuggets here.
Yeah. Well, a fun one, I think, back to a mutual friend of ours, Andy Burnett, was watching this at the time, and I was beating my head against a wall. Didn't know it until we got to a closing moment and kind of the end of an inspection period on the first couple houses that I assembled. But we assembled, Mark, 38, I think it's now 40 different lots to create this canvas. So we kind of hacked it out of the forest within this existing neighborhood. Did you know that only the Salvation Army property, the old, Vicky Knotts had it listed
right on the corner
for you,
that's right.
on that corner, acre and a quarter. That was the only lot out of 135 lots within the plat that runs to Villa that was within the plat allowed for commercial use. So we had to go get 2/3 majority of 135 lot owners 4 separate times to unlock those other lots to be developed for commercial use.
Did you have to get 100%, or was there just a percentage?
So this was a Joe Llewellyn question back in the day for Chesapeake, because they were involved. And he studied this and found that 2/3 majority was required.
That was all 2/3, okay. Still, that's a lot.
It was a lot. It was 82, if I remember correctly. 82 or 83 different lot owners had to sign and notarize an amendment to allow us to
modify the plat.
Yeah, to modify the plat.
Wow. Okay, but you got it.
We did.
How long did it take you?
Well, those 3 or 4 different amendments spanned from 2011 to 2019, I think. So to keep this short, that was one adversity.
It's a pretty big one.
It was, but it really brought us close to the neighbors.
Yeah.
And allowed them and allowed us, it forced us in a really healthy way to say, what do you guys want? Because we can't succeed without you, and here's what we have in mind, but what do you think?
How do they feel today?
They love it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Because they can walk.
They can walk to all the amenities.
That's
and,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
And we sent construction, we stay in close contact with them through the construction process, a little newsletter that we did for the neighborhood. And
how'd they feel about you closing 50th Street down?
I think that for the construction period was, I think the city had more heartburn about that than the neighborhood.
Oh, did they really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think the neighborhood saw it as an opportunity to kind of enclose our construction mess and prevent people from coming through the neighborhood to get to the project.
That's good. That's
so
good. Okay, so you started Oak. Probably didn't realize the world was going to change significantly with COVID. So you started. You're in the middle of it. What are some of the challenges you face? Just both from we had high inflation, and then you had rising interest costs. How'd you navigate some of those things? Those are two significant things that are probably the two most important items within a project.
Yeah, well, and I mean, you're thinking about probably the context of the last 30 or 40 years of being in the business, and 2008 was one, but Oklahoma had a really quick, snap back and to health, but COVID, it still has permanently, influenced things. Where we were, I'll never forget, March the 4th, 2020, I got a call from the head of real estate for RH. We started to recruit them August of 2018. I don't think we had a lease with them. My son was finishing his 8th grade, or just starting his 8th grade year that August. And I think when we signed the lease, he was about to start his sophomore year in college.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, you sophomore in college. I thought you were going to say sophomore in high school.
No.
Are you kidding me? So 4, 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah. So
you're a patient man.
March
Ryan.
4th of 2020 stands out because the president of their real estate division, they were going into their board meeting on the 5th to approve Oklahoma City. March 4th at 4 p.m., I get a phone call. And they said, we are scrapping. The CEO wants to scrap our agenda for tomorrow. It's going to be all about COVID, logistics, supply chain, and we'll get back to you in a couple weeks. And I kind of knew that probably wasn't the case. A couple weeks, couple months, 6 months. It was that next Monday that the stock market just went to the floor. And so, but the thing that was fortunate, so there was a lot of adversity introduced, and had an incredibly patient partner with Everett Dobson, stay the course. I did not think that we had virtually this plan back then, but I'd say there was a 2-year delay because of COVID. It would have been much longer, except what really was working in retail during COVID were tenants like the ones behind us, home furnishings, people refitting their office and being at their homes. They were spending money on Williams-Sonoma product and Pottery Barn and RH, and those tenants then were already part of the anchor core for the project, and so they came back to the well sooner than would have otherwise happened. So that was fortunate for us, even in the adversity.
And you're fortunate that you have such a good partner in Everett and the Dobson family. I mean, they were one of the leading families within this community, have been for a long time, and having them part of you is important, because there's a lot of people that wouldn't have stayed the course.
Wouldn't have worked otherwise without their dedication and commitment to Oklahoma City, and really freed me to have to be able to play in the sandbox. But they're instrumental. And you asked about the second feature of adversity. I think you were asking about commodity prices and how that's gone. And it's an issue. I mean, it's still an issue in terms of what allows a project to pencil. I'll never forget where lumber was when we were having to make some hard decisions about the multifamily, stick frame lumber. And it was at $1,500, and I think at fell in half eventually by the time we went to GMP, but it was a very tumultuous time, and it was a very challenging time to kind of keep everything within the lane.
I know some of our projects, our construction costs went up almost 30% from when we originally underwrote them.
Yeah.
And we were actually under construction, and it's hard to navigate those.
It is. Yeah. It is, and it makes you thankful for the product that you do own then on the other side, and because those prices continue to escalate. But although there's been a moderation of the size of the escalations, it does. There are these things that affect the cycles, right? Interest rates, commodity prices, and things ebb and flow in terms of like what the barriers to entry become as a result of that. And so it's always, I never would have guessed how much change within retail or within construction and design that would be. You think from the distance that commercial real estate's a pretty steady business, and there's so much change.
Yeah, come walk in our shoes for about 30 days. You'll think differently.
Yeah,
think different. So, project like this, I'm sure you faced a lot of skepticism. People saying, "Oh, that won't work." How'd you get over that? How'd you get? You got one person on this side saying push. You got another guy on this side saying there's no way. How'd you get through some of that?
Well, I think there's a fair amount there. I've got to compliment you and others in our community because you can get to answers, back to questions. What are the important questions to ask early? If somebody's out there listening and they're in their 20s and 30s and thinking about how to eventually develop or how to refine their development program, I am so impressed with the willingness of our community to share inputs. Yeah. So if you can come up with the right questions, the answers are out there, right?
Right.
And so when you have, your own belief barriers or others that are, saying that that's not possible, whether it's to get a certain kind of multifamily rent outcome outside of downtown or to get retail to say yes to Oklahoma City like RH.
Right.
Equipping yourself with the numbers that they're really going to need to make decisions with, or that you are. So I had to look outside of Oklahoma City to get a sense for what was possible with multifamily rents within projects like this that are kind of create their own weather pattern.
Right.
And so you have to go equip yourself and arm yourself with those numbers to believe. What do I have to believe kind of thing. And you have to arm yourself with good information. But other naysayers, part and parcel of the retail business. If you're going to go, whether it's getting Starbucks to a certain corner or RH to this one, what are your sales in a comparable market, and what you need your sales to be to make this a yes for you, and then what are the demographics that you need within this city that are going to cause you to locate in a certain location. And it's all, so much of it for retail is demographically driven. But you want to, in the same manner, equip yourself with information that helps you not to suspend, laws of gravity, but argue in favor of how the laws of gravity are here.
Yeah. So, if you knew how hard the journey was going to be before you started, do you think you would have taken that journey?
Yes. Well, gosh, that's a hard question.
It's easy to say yes, I would, because I love where I am today. But
the answer is no most days. but I do think part of what excited me was the opportunity. The second biggest project I developed was nowhere close to this one, and there was a sense of adventure and a sense of, can we do this? And we thought we could, but we knew we would be incredibly challenged, and we knew that the biggest part would be building the right team. And we've been so blessed, so fortunate with most every team member that's been bolted onto the project that's allowed our little Veritas development platform to do this. they've been the real superstars behind the scenes. But I understand your question, and most days it's no, but then when you start to get excited about what you could do with that canvas and what it could mean for your community, there's a lot of fulfillment that comes from that.
Okay, so bolt-on question. You're young, a lot younger than me. You're still in your 40s. Would you do it again? Or are you going to do it again?
A year ago, I told myself, and my wife told me, you're going to take a little time off. And I feel like the last 6 months has allowed some real opportunity for reflection and balance, where for about 3 years it was not balanced. But in a needed way, it was not balanced in an intentional, by design way. But I think, yes, I think if the right opportunity presented itself, there will be a time where I think we put it in gear again and go try to do something similar.
I won't ask you the question. Have you identified the spot? We'll leave that for another day.
Okay.
So, what's something you do different?
Well,
It's just like when you build a house or you buy a house and redo it, and you get done, you always say, God, I wish I would have done this. Give me one or two things.
well, I think the first thing that comes to mind, I won't go into too much detail, but when I look at what we have a really great start. We have an incredible foundation that's been created. We've really labored to create a foundation that could be built on and make this product, relevant for decades and decades. This is a retail nuance, and I know, retail isn't as much your field of interest, but for anybody that is out there that has retail in their crosshairs, in my experience, if you build the best mousetrap at the right location, you're going to add value.
Right. Can you give us any good information of what's to come next here at the Oak?
I think what you'll see next is you have to kind of meet the retail market where it's at. And if you look at where discretionary spending is from 20 years ago to where it's at today, there's a lot more that tilts toward food and beverage and uses that create activation and a reason to visit. And I'll share an anecdote in a second about retail. But I think you'll see a culinary district that includes some more food and beverage options, and that'll probably be the next phase.
Yeah, cool. So somebody that wants to get into the development, so you started with the idea from a Sonic out in California and then got forced into the development game with the small retail, and here you are today. What is some advice you'd give to somebody that wants to get into the development business?
Yeah, I think it depends on who they are and what their field. Sometimes I make the mistake that everybody's got the same kind of weird interests that I have, and some folks love construction and they're drawn to that. Some people love design and they're drawn to that.
Yeah.
Some people love the brokerage and sales aspect, and others like development. But back to Sean Frankfurt, whether he intentionally did it or not, using those early years to really develop your muscle tone for work ethic and throwing yourself into adversity is such a refining process, and it's not something that we naturally kind of lean in toward. But I think the advice would be, what is it that you have in front of you that you're kind of shying away from, that by diving into and really with all vigor and curiosity to benefit you in 20 years instead of in the next 6 or 12 months helps.
Very good advice.
Yeah, I think helps.
It's not a short game. It's a long game.
Yep.
It's a long game. Okay, so early on we talked a little bit about your experience with a municipality in California. Compare that experience. I realize it was a while ago, but compare that experience to your experience in working with the city of Oklahoma City in developing the Oak.
I was 25 or 6, and I remember being going into that community planning advisory council hearing that night. We had just moved.
That just sounds scary at 25.
Well,
community advisory council.
I thought, this is going to be great. They're going to be excited. Sonic is this fun brand. And I walked in, and it was a room full of about 50 people. And I thought, well, there are a lot of people here. I wonder where I'm at on the agenda. And I went over and I got a piece of paper that was the agenda, and there was one item on it.
It was you.
Just me.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, no, I don't think they're here to root for me. So 2 hours later.
Because people don't typically show up to those meetings in favor.
No.
Unless you have organized those favors.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so, and we did it fundamentally different, back to the plat process here, which I'll talk about maybe if you'd like later. But the environment then, after that, I think 7-0 unanimous decision of ruling opposed to our application, it would have gone on to the planning council or planning commission in Sacramento, and then the city council. And so afterwards I asked the architect, what is our likelihood of success at planning commission? He's like, 0. So now, setting aside the use, there's some toxicity perception with fast food and all of that. Back to your real question, which, what is it like to develop in Northern California versus Oklahoma City? I paid more than to develop that 7,500 square foot retail strip center in fees to the county of Sacramento and the city than I paid for the property itself.
No way.
Yep.
You paid more in fees
I bought
to
the property for $525,000, and I think the fees in total, there's this acronym called TUMP fees, county fees, mitigation fees, $600,000.
All the different impact fees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it takes the capital that the free market would put and deploy into a project like this, and it puts it into a different path, and I'm not sure what they do with it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, wow.
But anyway, that was an important financial metric, but it also tells a story about the environment with which you're developing within. You talk about the people in Oklahoma City. They really want to see the development community succeed. They feel like us, the sky's the limit.
Yep.
And they are exemplary to work with in the nation, in my opinion, in the different places we've developed.
We are so lucky here with the leadership we have.
We are.
Yeah. So you mentioned a plat. Tell the audience what a plat is.
A plat is just a planning instrument to go take what probably was the Wildman farm back then and break it up into subdivision of a bunch of different individual tracts and say, here's the shape of how this is going to look for the security of the people buying a house here in 1955. Their neighbor is going to be a resident, and it's going to be a house, a single-family detached home. It just sets in motion a level of predictability, but it also has legal
guidelines
to
that you
it.
have to adhere to. So did you create a new plat for your development?
We bought those 38 or 40 different tracts, all of them except 2, one of which you used to manage, this office here.
Yep, Penn Park.
Anything south of 50th, registry was south of 50th. It was outside of that plat.
Okay.
It was, so we didn't. We amended the plat to allow what we bought within the plat to abide by the amended guidelines to allow for commercial use. Then we went and got a PUD and we've had several revisions since to the canvas. So the development area fits within the PUD.
So your PUD, which is a planned unit development, do you have individual parcels? So each structure is its own parcel?
We did.
Okay.
What kind of thinking about was such a risk that we're taking.
Yeah.
We wanted to make sure that all the exit ramps are protected. And the way that I thought about that is you'd want to be able to monetize Capitol Grill if you wanted to sell it off. Although these projects generally get sold as one thing, mixed use has become its own category within the investment sales community, and there's a premium paid when they're successful. But exit ramps. And so this hotel sits upon a condominium structure upon its own lot. And so the hotel could be sold. Believe it or not, the retail underneath could be sold separate. You wouldn't for functionality reasons, but individual lots, and that helps to then kind of have a better understanding of what the tax assessments are.
And then you developed CC&Rs, covenants, conditions, and restrictions that each individual lot has to pay into, and because you have a lot of common area here, you want to make sure that that's managed correctly. Is that correct?
Correct. Okay. Yes. Yeah. The again, Avalon as an example, or the Grove, the very best mixed use projects have this seamless integration and so if there's a call that gets made to our sales team at the hotel and they're needing to do an event in a meeting space, that they have the option then to leverage that event into Heartwood Park, create an event and activate the event in Heartwood Park. Similar, with the residential, if there's a resident that wants to host something, or the team over there, the operations team wants to come into the common space, it's meant to work in a seamless way where we're all kind of working together.
That's great.
And then, yes, you pay into common area activation fees.
So do you manage that association yourself?
We have a management team that manages. There are 3 separate management teams, and Veritas manages those.
Those. Okay, cool.
Those would be the hotel, distinct to itself, the residential management team, and then the common area and retail management team.
Great. Well, Ryan, it's been a pleasure having you today. I mean, this is a remarkable feat that. So you said you've been at this for 12 years. We're in 2025.
It goes back farther than that.
Does it
I made my
really?
first level. Thank you again, and thanks for the invitation. But Vicki Knotts sent her a letter of intent on that first corner, I think March of 2009.
No way.
Yes. And so in some ways since then.
Yeah. Wow. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing. So we always like to, so this podcast is Real Opportunity. So we always like to finish up with a real op of the day. And listening to you, I kind of go back to, this is not a part-time job. You have to be in or you're out. You can't put a foot in or a toe in. You've got to. So I think the real op of the day is really be passionate in what you're doing if you're going to do it, and engage in it fully. Would you agree with that?
Agree.
Yeah. So thank you, Ryan, for being here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.